Howdy folks, hope you've all had a good weekend. Mine's been alright, it's had its ups and its downs, more on that in a bit. And welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. The first thing I wanted to talk about this week though, I mean, technically it's an ad, although it also isn't. Let me explain. Today's video contains no paid product placement. There is a product placement, but I'm not getting paid for it. Let me explain. So, if you're anything like me, you might find yourself getting increasingly annoyed with people gathering money for charities in the street. Now, I don't have a problem with people gathering money for charities. The part that I have a problem with is why do they all need access to my phone number and email address before I'm allowed to give them any of my money? Now, I'm not stupid, I know why, and it's certainly no coincidence that the second I give one charity my personal information, I suddenly start getting targeted with begging letters from all kinds of other charities. And it doesn't take a huge stretch of imagination to guess that perhaps they're also, because let's face it, they're charities, they need all the money they can get, perhaps they're also selling my personal information onto data brokers, where it can be used for all kinds of purposes. Well, that is where Bono comes in. No, not that Bono, this Bono. Bono is, amongst many other things, a way of giving to your favourite causes while keeping your personal information, well, personal. It's all incredibly simple. You simply pick 3 causes that you care about, you decide how much you want to give every month, starting from as little as $5 a month, and that's it. Bono takes care of the rest. Keeps your personal details personal. All of your donations are 100% tax deductible. In fact, they even provide you with a tax receipt from your donations at the end of every financial year. And they let you know exactly what kind of impact your donations are having. For example, I set up my own profile this month. I'm giving $10 a month, and you can see the annual impact that my donations are going to have. Now, it's not a lot, but you've got to start somewhere, and every little helps. You can set up your own profile in seconds. Just click the link in the description or scan the QR code appearing on screen right now. Tell Bono what charities you care about by selecting 3 causes. Decide on your monthly giving budget from as little as $5 a month. And when you're at the payment page, the first 50 donors who use coupon code Jingles will get $5 towards their first donation from me. Full disclosure, Bono do also have a creator referral program where creators like me can earn a small percentage of the donations that get made by their referrals, but I've told Bono to put that all back into the charities that I'm supporting. So, like I said, no paid product placement today. It's just a product, and I hope you like it. So, anyway, yeah, ups and downs. So, I suppose the big news this week is that Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 is out. And it's really, really good. I was astonished at just how good it was, particularly how good it looks. It is one of the best looking and prettiest games I can remember installing in recent memory. I was kind of worried at first, because, I mean, you're probably like me, the first time you install a game, the first thing that you do is you go in and you start setting the graphical options. And there's not a lot of leeway for tinkering with Space Marine 2. You've got a bunch of presets, mostly. There are a couple of things that you can specifically tinker with, but not a lot. I mean, generally speaking, you pick a preset, cross your fingers and hope for the best. So, I mean, I have a fairly chunky PC, so I went for the quality preset, trying to get everything looking as good as possible, and was very alarmed to see that on the quality preset it will start upscaling in order to try to keep your frame rate running at 30 frames per second. I thought, what the hell? Is it 2015 again? What happened to 60 FPS gaming? I mean, what do you think I'm running this on? A PlayStation 5? But I needn't have worried, because with the quality preset and everything looking as beautiful as possible, 80, 90, 100 frames per second, no problem. The upscaling never kicked in, so all good. Oh yeah, more about the PlayStation 5 Pro later on as well. Oh wow, you've probably all heard the news. But anyway, Space Marine 2. So, quality preset selected, running at 4K, never drop below 80 frames per second, and it looks beautiful. It is just amazing how good this game looks. So that was the up. The down, I think the game's amazing. but holy crap, I am bad at it. I mean, I didn't realise it was possible to die in a tutorial, but it is in Space Marine 2 if you're bad enough. Space Marine 2 is, for me, and you probably have games that fall into this kind of category yourself. Alien Isolation's another one for me, but it's one of those games that I think is absolutely amazing. But I know I'm never going to play, because I'm just not good enough. It's not quite a Twitch reaction shooter in the same vein as something like Bulletstorm or Doom, but it is kind of up there, and I'm just too old. I just don't have the reactions to respond to all of the prompts in time to actually, you know, not suck, which is a shame because it looks just incredible. They've managed to completely nail the look and feel of Warhammer 40k. It's such a good game. There's another thing about Space Marine 2, though, that, you know, again, this could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, depending on how you feel about... Again, I'm going to need to explain. So there are basically three ways of playing Space Marine 2. There's the single-player campaign, which is... it's fine, you know, it looks and sounds really, really good. Although the campaign is probably not the way that most people are going to be playing the game, at least not long-term. Because it's not that long, and it basically functions kind of as a tutorial. It gets you used to the game mechanics, it introduces the weapons, it tells a bit of a story, but most people are going to be playing the game in one of the two other game modes. PvP, which I haven't tried, but which I've heard is really good, and co-op, which I think is the way most people are probably going to be playing it. And here's the thing, because the co-op mode in Space Marine 2 is good, but it's basically just Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, except you're playing a Space Marine, instead of some criminal scum from a penal battalion co-opted into serving the Inquisition. And again, you know, this isn't necessarily going to be a bad thing, because you're playing a Space Marine, that's the whole draw. And they do a very good job of making you feel powerful, while at the same time making it entirely possible for you to get your ass kicked 7 different ways to Sunday if you're not paying attention to what's going on around you. Which is as it should be. It's just that I'm really bad at it, and I just kept getting my ass killed. So, yeah, one of those games that really, really deserves to do well, and by all accounts it's breaking sales records and concurrent user records on Steam, which it 100% deserves to do, but I don't think I'm going to be playing it. I mean, I've bought the game, I may as well get my money's worth out of it, and I feel no shame whatsoever in saying this, because man's got to know his limitations. I might have to restart the campaign, but on the easiest possible difficulty setting, just so I can actually complete it. Which does mean that you probably shouldn't be expecting a video series on Space Marine 2. Because generally when I'm playing these games, I'm doing them at least on normal difficulty. And I do have at least enough sense of shame to not subject you to watching me play this on the Mommy Don't Hurt Me difficulty setting. But that is probably the only way I'm ever going to get this completed. Because it is tough. Which is fine, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And just to put this into context here, I don't want to scare anybody off from trying this game out, because it is really good. It's a game that deserves to be played. When I say it's tough, we're not talking Dark Souls levels of difficulty. You know, it's not Elden Ring Shadows of the Erd Tree or whatever the new expansion for that was. It's not that kind of level of difficulty, but it's tough enough to kick my arse. As you can quite plainly see right here. I mean, not even 10 minutes into the campaign and I've already died. It's, yeah. Yeah, I'll probably just dial the difficulty down and just enjoy it in my own time. But if, you know, even if you're not a fan of Warhammer 40k, this is a good game. So, anyway, moving on swiftly. The PlayStation 5 Pro just got announced. $700. It doesn't even come with a stand. It's got no disk drive, doesn't come with a stand. $700. You could buy a decent entry-level gaming PC for that. What the hell? I mean, Sony are, well, I was going to say the victims of their own success here. Victim is definitely not the right word. Because the Xbox has basically provided no competition whatsoever, Sony can just charge what they like. I mean, you'd be technically incorrect to say that Sony are basically operating a monopoly with the PlayStation because the Xbox exists. And so saying that the PlayStation has competition from the Xbox is technically correct, but, I mean, you'd struggle to notice the competition. So what we've got here is a situation for what might actually be for the first time. Sony are not selling the PlayStation at a loss. Because Sony, might sound surprising, but they've never really been in the business of selling PlayStations. I mean, they kind of have, because they've sold a lot of PlayStations, but they didn't make money from selling PlayStations. This was always their marketing strategy, and it was a good strategy. Get as many PlayStations sold at whatever price it takes to get them sold, even if they end up losing money on the PlayStations themselves, in order to get bums on seats, in order to get PlayStations in every living room. And then they make the money, which is the exact opposite of what Nintendo did, because only Nintendo make Nintendo games, but anybody can make a game for the PlayStation, and Sony take a cut of the profits on the sales of the games. That's why they have historically been selling PlayStations at a loss. They want to get everybody on the PlayStation, and then they make the money from other people making games for it and selling those. But that isn't it's certainly not the case as far as the games are concerned. I mean, more on that in a second. But they just don't really have any competition. I mean, the Xbox is doing spectacularly badly. There is, at the moment, no competition at all from Nintendo or Sega. So they don't have to sell the PlayStation 5 Pro at a loss. They can actually sell it for what it costs. $700. I mean, I'm sure the price will come down eventually at some point in the future when Nintendo and Sega finally wake up and realise it's 2024 and produce their next generation console. But until that happens, there is absolutely no reason for Sony to reduce the price of the PlayStation 5 Pro. But what about the games? So that was always the difference between Sony and Nintendo, because I mentioned that nobody but Nintendo makes games for Nintendo, and this means that with very, very few exceptions, every game that comes out on the Nintendo, whatever the current generation Nintendo system is at the time, is always a great game, because they're lovingly crafted by Nintendo themselves. But Sony never gave a shit about games on the PlayStation. They were quite happy to take money from whoever wanted to make a PlayStation game. So you've tended to have a lot of games available for the PlayStation, very few games available for the Nintendo, but the games that were available for the Nintendo were generally excellent, whereas the games that were available for the PlayStation, and there were some great games on the PlayStation, but there was an awful lot of dog shit as well. But that was fine, you know, that was Sony's marketing strategy. So what's happened with the PlayStation 5? I'm not entirely sure, because if you look at the list of, in fact, I'll put them up on screen right now. All of the PlayStation 5 exclusive games. It's a very, very short list. 21 games on this list. Apollo 13, The Lost Tapes VR, Astrobot, Astro's Playroom, which was a tech demo that came with the PS5, The Dark Pictures, Death Stranding 2, Demon's Souls, Destruction All-Stars, Final Fantasy VII, Firewall Ultra, Horizon Call of the Mountain, Last of Us Part 2, Marvel's Wolverine, Neptunia Reverse, Project Wingman, Quantum Error, R-Type Final 3 Evolved, Rise of the Ronin, Silent Hill, The Short Message, Spider-Man 2, Stellar Blade, and Synapse. 21 games. Except one of them, Neptunia Reverse, is a PlayStation 3 game. Another one, The Last of Us Part 2, is a PlayStation 4 game. Astro's Playroom isn't a game, it's a glorified tech demo that's included for free when you buy the PlayStation 5, and if you're feeling a little ungenerous, you could say that's exactly what Silent Hill the short message was as well. So out of 21 titles, and it's only 21 because Astrobot came out last week. If I'd published this video a week ago, it would have been 20. But out of the 21 that we have, we've already eliminated 2 for not being PlayStation 5 games, and another 2 for not being games. So we're down to, what, 17? Alright, let's take a chisel to the remaining games on the list. Project Wingman is about as PlayStation exclusive as Doom 2. It was actually first released on the PC, and then on the Xbox 360 a year later, so we're now down to 16. Of the remaining 16 titles on the list of PlayStation 5 only games, Apollo 13, The Dark Pictures, Horizon Call of the Mountain and Synapse, while they are technically PlayStation 5 exclusive games, they're PlayStation VR 2 games, and yes, you must have a PlayStation 5 in order to use the VR 2 system. But that's an extra nearly $600. So, yes, PlayStation 5 only games, but it's not like you can go out, buy a PlayStation 5 and play Apollo 13, The Dark Pictures, Horizon Call of the Mountain, or Synapse. You need to spend an additional nearly $600 to enjoy any of those, because they're VR games. So, we're now down to 12 titles. 12 whole exclusive PlayStation 5 titles that you can go out, buy a PlayStation 5 and enjoy. Except you can't, because out of the remaining 12 titles, Death Stranding 2 on the beach isn't out yet. Firewall Ultra also not out yet, and it's another PlayStation VR 2 title, so an extra $550 please. And Marvel's Wolverine isn't out yet either. So out of the initial list of 21 reasons why you might want to actually spend money on a PlayStation 5, we've eliminated all ones that are just remastered versions of PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 games, all the ones that are virtual reality games that you need to hand over an additional $550 for, and all the ones that haven't actually been published yet, and you have 9 games. That's it. None of which actually require a PlayStation 5 Pro. You can play all of these games on the PlayStation 5. They'll just look a little bit better, run at a higher frame rate, which isn't nothing. I mean, we all spend an absolute fortune upgrading the graphics cards on our PCs, so they'll look a little bit better and run at a higher frame rate. And every other PlayStation 5 game is either not exclusive to the PlayStation 5, or you can play it on the PlayStation 4. And Sony expect people, and people are, actually handing over, I mean, pre-orders are already up. People are paying $700 for the privilege of playing 9 whole games at a slightly better frame rate or with slightly better graphical fidelity. 700. You know, you can buy an RTX 4070 for that. And okay, the 4070 doesn't come with an SSD and, you know, whatever else is included in the hardware of PS5 Pro. But the PC that you're going to put it into does, and you've got slightly more than 9 titles available for that. Hell, you can buy an entry-level gaming PC for just $100 or $200 more than what Sony are expecting for the PS5 Pro. I mean, you know, it's entry-level. You won't be playing anything in 4K, but the vast majority of people on PC play at 1080p anyway, and you'll be able to play at 60 frames per second, and you'll have slightly more than 9 titles available to choose from. What the hell, Sony? It's all Microsoft's fault, of course. If the Xbox wasn't shit, Sony would have to lower their prices in order to compete, but, well, it is. So they don't. Of course, the real story here is that as a proud card-carrying member of the PC gaming master race, as I'm sure most of you are too, none of this actually affects us. We can simply once again sit back and have a really good laugh at the expense of our less fortunate console peasant brethren. And of course, the best part of all of this is that all of these PlayStation exclusive titles, they don't stay exclusive to the PlayStation for long, do they? Eventually, they all come out on PC too, as I'm sure Death Stranding 2 will, the original game did. So that's actually 8 PlayStation 5 exclusives. Oh, and hang on a second. Stellar Blade's being ported to the PC as well. So we're down to 7 titles exclusive to the PlayStation 5 that you don't actually need a PlayStation 5 Pro in order to play. So that's $100 per game. Or you could just do the sensible thing with those $700. And for the amount of money that it would take you to get that next generation console, you just keep upgrading the PC. It's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Honestly, it's just great being a PC gamer. I mean, sure, we go through the occasional dry spell when there's not really an awful lot in the way of new games coming out that interest us, and I find that to be more and more true the older I get. But at the same time, I mean, in the length of time since the PlayStation 5 was actually released, this was all the way back in 2020, by the way, it's a 4-year-old console, they've had 7 actual PlayStation 5 exclusive games in 4 years. And not all of them even reviewed well. I mean, some of them were real stinkers. Meanwhile, here on PC, and I realise that what I'm about to say is completely subjective, personal opinions matter. But if you were to ask me to name just 7 PC titles that I'd really enjoyed playing in the last 6 months, let alone 4 years, I would really struggle. There'd be a couple of great games that I'd have to cut from the list just to narrow it down to 7. In fact, you know what? Here we go. Thought experiment. We're going to end this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles with this question, which I'm putting to you. Let's see in the comments. I want you to name 7, no more than 7, PC games that you have really enjoyed playing in the last 6 months. No more than 7. You may have to cut some titles from that list. And while you're putting that list together, just remember, 7 is the most that they have ever had exclusive to the PlayStation 5 in the entire 4-year lifetime of that console. Maybe Space Marine 2 should be on the list. I mean, I don't know how many of you have actually played it, but if you have, I'm sure most of you will probably agree that, yep, it deserves its place on the list. And just hold that thought, because remember, you're playing it at 4K resolution. At 80 frames per second, and you don't have to put your hand in your pocket to shell out some extra cash every month to Sony for a PlayStation Plus subscription, just in order to take advantage of the cooperative or PvP multiplayer. It's great to be a PC gamer. It really, really is. And on that shitting on our console peasant brethren bombshell, that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.